Today, Sam, we are going to talk about Healing Hashimoto's Summit and do a little bit of a review on that. We did this not too long ago with the Parasite Summit, and people found it really effective and really beneficial. So if you saw that one, then welcome back to another one. But this is going to be another really important talk that we need to go over, because if there's anything that comes up more than anything else right now, especially with women in the health space, is that there's a lot of thyroid issues. So what is Hashimoto's? Essentially, it is an immune system attacking your thyroid gland. So it's an autoimmune disease. And we're going to get into that as we do continue this talk as well. So what we've done, as normal, we grab the access pass so that we can come back to these talks over and over again. Now, the first thing that you need to do is, if you're watching this live right now or within a few days, then you can still catch the Healing Hashimoto's Summit completely free, and just click on that link that you see on this page right now, or in the Facebook post, or wherever you're seeing this. It will be fastwaytohealth.com/Hashimoto's, and that will take you through to the free event starting next week on 6th of November, I believe, for an entire week. If you're catching this later on, still go through to that link and you can purchase your all access pass there. So, all right, where do we start?
Well, firstly, I actually thought it was a really good point that I'll go into more, obviously, detail of what I listened to. But when you say Hashimoto's disease and how common it is, what the interview I watched said at the end was, it's not something that you just wear on your sleeve. So it's like people could be walking around with it and you don't actually know that people are sick and suffering from this disease because it's hidden. And so, one of the most important elements is finding your voice, and having a voice, because it's not something you know about. Which is when this summit came up, I was like, oh, Hashimoto's, and I actually had to do some research into what that actually was, because it's not something that a lot of people really you can look at someone and go, oh, they've got that.
Yeah, well, they're saying that 90% of issues that are happening with your thyroid is due to Hashimoto's. And from the talk that I saw, most of the time it's misdiagnosed as just having a basic thyroid condition, and they don't get the proper treatment and take the proper protocols for Hashimoto's, essentially. So so there's a lot of people right now that don't even know that they have Hashimoto's.
Yeah, which is interesting, hey. Well, do you want me to go into my one first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I watched one with a holistic nutritionist called Andrea Nakayama, and it was all about loving yourself first. And Andrea, a little bit of her background. So she went through the passing of her husband, who had died of cancer, and it was just shortly after having her first child. So for several years, she was dealing with a lot of hormone changes going on while she was pregnant, and then the passing of her soulmate, and then raising this child on her own, that she had so much stress physically, mentally, and everywhere, that several years later she discovered that she actually had Hashimoto's disease. Now, what I found interesting listening to this interview was that a lot of what she spoke about was kind of about loving yourself first, which I think can be related back to not just people suffering from Hashimoto's disease, but it's, there's so many things that I took from it that I could relate to. So that's what I liked about it as well. Really relatable, and just, how can you kind of step into loving yourself first? And again, going back to how important that is. So she describes it as a lifelong journey, and that there may be people around you, to support you to an extent, but you really need to learn how to be your own hero, essentially. And that's important for not just, I think that's important for everybody we're on this life right now, and it's a long journey. And so how can you really step into your own power? How can you take control? And she said she used to look in the mirror and she would ask herself, what do I want from me to be my best self? And so she would do this mirror, until she got confident enough to be her own hero. She said she would go back to the mirror all the time and just continue to ask herself, what does she need from her to be her best self? Which I thought was a nice kind of question to ask. The next thing was just mindset. Mindset is key. And she said she learned a lot from going back to when her husband died. She said, looking back on him, he was 34 and he lost his life. And and they asked her, like, you know, do you fall into that victim mentality a lot? And she said, no, from that experience of watching my husband do that, she learnt that mindset is key, and there's no time to be a victim in this life, because the learning here is you need to take responsibility of your own life. And she said she just sees things now as such a blessing, and you know, during the harder times, it's all about, well, I need to take responsibility of this because no one else is going to do it for me. So mindset was key. And then a lot of the time, you know, with people with dis-ease or Hashimoto's, or I even think we can relate to this, is being out in social settings or being out into different scenarios where people are doing different things, or where you need to be doing things differently. So with Hashimoto's, you might have a strict diet. You know, you can't drink alcohol. You can't do this type of thing. So she said going out in social settings, she had this opt-in reframe that she worked with. She called it opt-in, which means she might be sitting around a table of people, of her girlfriends, and they're all drinking wine and having a good time. And she's like, and that is like a choice where I could sit there and I could feel judged, and I could feel like I'm the other, like left out. I could, like, you know, I'm not going to be drinking alcohol, so then they're probably going to question that. And I'm like kind of like, you know, this other person that's just sitting there. She's like, I could go from that where it puts you in like this dark place of like, oh, why me? Like this victim mentality, or I just opt in. So she's like, so I sit and I get my water and I put the lime in the water and I'm 110% like committed to the conversation and I'm involved, and like no one even blinks an eyelid. She's like, it's like this choice that you make, and it's this opt-in reframe of like, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. And I think that ultimately comes from judgment of yourself. Do you feel judged because you're the outcast? And are you judging yourself? Or do you just fully accept it? Because once you accept it, then everyone else around you doesn't even blink an eyelid. And I love that lesson because I constantly get reminded of that all the time. And I think it's really powerful. And so there's the opt-in reframe, and then there's the similar ground. So like, if she's going on dates and things like that, it's like, how can I find similar ground with these people, even though, you know, I have something completely different that they might not understand? Well, what is the similar ground? And the interviewees related it back to their children. They're like, yeah, like I've got teenagers, and sometimes I have no idea what planet they're on to what planet we're on. But the similar ground is like, but you're my child and I love you and your family. So let's, you know, so where can you find similar ground to make things a little bit easier when you're feeling like an outcast?
Yeah. And that's exactly the path I went on. You go in this full circle where you feel like you're being left out and people are judging you, but it's nothing but the judgment that you're placing on yourself.
Or the acceptance, right? Yeah. Because as soon as you accept it, then all that goes away, and people just like, people accept you for you. It's cool. And then the next one is around taking care of you. So this goes on a little bit from what I've just mentioned there. So you might choose, or you might not choose. With this disease, you have, you know, certain things that you need to do. So certain food that you can and can't eat and things like this. And so when you're going to an event, a family event or a social event, taking care of you is not insulting anyone, but it's becoming your own advocate, because no one else is going to advocate for you. So the example was, you know, if you she went to a Christmas Eve dinner and they were making this white bean soup, and she knew she couldn't eat white beans, but she didn't have the guts, or she didn't have like the love in her heart to say she doesn't want to eat it, because she already felt like she was really fussy, and she just was like, oh, I'll just eat it. And then she was up all night in the toilet and felt really sick the next day. So the lesson there was, you know, it's not an insult to the people that are cooking for you, but they're not psychic, so they don't know what you need and what you don't need. And so what she learnt from there is like, you know, she would rock up with her plate of food, or it's about communication. So just communicating, do you know what, like, I think my son's absolutely going to love this white bean soup. However, you know I'm pretty up in the air all the time these days, not sure what I can and can't eat. So I'm just going to bring my own salad. I'm going to make enough for people if they want to have it, all good. Like, just not making a big deal about it, but communicating or taking responsibility and bringing your own stuff. Relate?
Yeah, super easy. So much easier sometimes.
Yeah. And then the last bit was being in relationships with this disease, and not wearing it on your sleeve, people don't know about this. And so she's going back to the dating scene and getting into relationships. And this is just universal. This isn't selective to if you've got a disease, if you're suffering from Hashimoto's or not. In relationships, this is what she said. It's all about communication and understanding your own boundaries, and then having flexibility with being able to navigate. And what is the risk and reward of togetherness? So how basically, like, you put up your boundaries, but then you need to be flexible around those to be able to give a little, take a little, and work together to find that connection, I guess. And I think that's just in relationships, communication, yes, having an understanding of what you need and what they need. And the kind of overall thing was to communicate, because you need to find your voice in this, because people aren't psychic, and this is just overall, people aren't psychic. They don't know what you need, what you don't need. You need to have a voice, and you need to be able to step into that, because dealing with Hashimoto's isn't just one thing physically, and it's not one thing mentally. In fact, it's a lot of different things, and it's a lot of different things for different people that are living different lives. So we all need to kind of work together, and especially if you've got people close to you, spouses, partners, all that kind of thing, we all need to work together. And to do that is communication and remembering that you have a voice.
Awesome. Sounds like a pretty good one in terms of not just Hashimoto's, but
relating it back
everything.
To yeah,
everything around life really is, when you have that acceptance and non-judgment for yourself and communication with others, then life just gets a lot easier and a lot less stressful and more fun as well. So pretty cool. So my talk was Managing Attitude, Expectations and Family Support by Dr. Datis Karazian. And it was pretty interesting because, first of all, we learned that 9 out of 10 thyroid or Hashimoto's issue and disease is with women especially. So it's much more prevalent in women, but doesn't mean that men can't get it. And most people are just told they have a thyroid problem rather than being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which means they can't take the proper precautions and the proper actions to put that into remission, or at least live a better life knowing what condition they have. And that's really due to the physicians and not taking enough care and time to actually learn about what Hashimoto's is and how they can actually help their patients on a much better level. So there's this massive disconnect happening, which is why so many people are now walking around undiagnosed and virtually unknowingly to having Hashimoto's disease, which is a bit of an issue. And the reason why it's an issue is because if it's not diagnosed correctly and the actions aren't taken quick enough, then it leads into things like celiac disease. It leads into things like gut issues, leaky gut, and other issues within the brain as well. So it needs to be you need to get on top of it as soon as you can. So people with Hashimoto's disease are scared to share their symptoms as well, because a lot of people, they don't always looks like they're sick. So when people say that they're feeling tired and lethargic and all of those other symptoms that come up with Hashimoto's, then other people look at them like they're crazy because they think that they're fine, but in reality on the inside they know they're not, so they're scared to speak up. So again, it comes back to that communication with not just the people around you, but communicating it to the right people as well, so they can help you along the way. Something really interesting and goes back to relationships was science is showing that having a dispute with your spouse raises something called the interleukin-6 and can trigger an autoimmune response for up to 3 days. So relationships are a huge aspect to overcoming this particular disease. So just a small dispute with your spouse, from whether it's about anything at all, not just about your health, can trigger this chemical in your brain that flares up your autoimmune response, and you literally suffer for 3 days just because of that dispute. So having the right people around you and the right relationships is paramount to actually overcoming and putting this disease into remission. in general medicine, they've got no cure for Hashimoto's disease. You need to learn with it in remission, learn to live with it in remission, which means lifestyle factors have a huge impact on whether you have a flare up or whether your inflammatory system is calm. So, as with everything, it comes back to the main things that we teach about, which is drinking enough water to stay hydrated, getting enough sleep so that you're not tired, dealing with stress through meditation and other ways. Also, eating the right food, so having a whole foods plant-based diet. Also, doing some fasting regularly to really detox and purify the body. All of those things are going to help Hashimoto's disease because it helps lift your immune system, right? And when your immune system's not compromised, then that's when you can fight off the disease in a much, much more powerful way. And then coming back to the mindset as well. So this doctor takes a holistic approach to what he was talking about and what he does is that if you come in and you have a victim mindset and you play the victim of why did this happen to me, I don't deserve it, all of this type of stuff, then you're never going to get better and it's never going to work out for you. So taking responsibility for where you are, saying, yep, okay, I'm here. Now what do I need to do? What lifestyle factors do I need to change so that I can live better? And then you've got much better chance of having a much more enjoyable life. And then really just to sum everything up, it's an immune attack against your thyroid gland. And it has inflammation in the body attacking other areas like your joints and your brain and your organs, which leads to more disease and dis-ease in the body. So it's really important to get on top of this as quickly as possible, taking the right actions and really dealing with it as quickly as you can. And then before I finish up, there's some really good tips there, but someone that we love to learn from is Don and Tyler Tolman. And I want to share that Don Tolman has helped a lot of people with thyroid issues to the point where doctors have actually taken people's thyroids out of their body, and through the protocols that Don teaches, he's helped them completely regrow a whole new thyroid, which is absolutely mind-blowing when you actually hear about it first. But when you see that it happens not just with one person, but with a few people, and and then others are just getting over their thyroid issues, it's at least worth a shot. And that's simply by having 1 cup of mushrooms, any type of mushrooms per day. And within 9 to 12 months, then your thyroid should be back to its normal function, basically. So if anyone is out there who has thyroid issues and wants to give that a go, keep in touch with us and let us know, because we'd love to hear more and more of those stories of people who can actually get their thyroid back to a complete function again. So
yep, back to Mother Nature, as we love as well.
Absolutely. So it's pretty cool, actually, and I'm really excited to continue learning more about this particular summit. So if you're not registered yet, go to fastwaytohealth.com/Hashimoto's, and that will take you in. You'll get registered. If you're up for it as well, definitely buy your all access pass while it's on special, and get a nice little discount there, so you can keep coming back to it later and later. It's what we do. Health Talks is probably the only other resource we actually learn from compared to, I think it's Health Talks and Food Matters. They're basically the only people we trust and learn from when we're actually continuing to develop our own skills as well. So any questions, feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
See you guys.